Hello Linux lovers, my name's Wimpy, welcome to my world. You may have seen from recent streams that I've been working on a new operating system for the Raspberry Pi, one to run games consoles. So I've learnt a lot in that process, or at least I've learnt how to optimize the build process somewhat. So I'm going to take a little look at incorporating what I've learned from that experience over to the Ubuntu MATE builds for the Raspberry Pi. If you're watching this stream after the fact, it was originally recorded live on twitch.tv/Wimpy's World. So if you want to join in the sessions interactively, then give us a follow on our Twitch channel and you can join. So let's just recap. So the Retro Remix is a Raspberry Pi operating system based on Ubuntu, designed for running retro consoles. I've been working on that for, well, on and off for a couple of weeks, sort of as the main thing that I've been tinkering with in my spare time. And now I've learnt a whole bunch from that process. And originally that build process was derived from the build scripts I created for Ubuntu MATE for the Raspberry Pi. So I'm now going to move all of that sort of work, all that I've learned, back from the build process for the Retro Remix to the build process for Ubuntu MATE. There's quite some changes there. The whole way that the environment's brought up has changed. I was deriving from pre-installed server images. Hello Takov, good morning, how are you? And congratulations, by the way. Oh, Martin looks around at everything and wonders why things aren't firing. Interesting. That should have gone off. Dear me. Right, I'll just run that one manually. Just let me check something a moment here. Why did that fail? I double checked all of this before I got started. Well, let me just stop and start this again. Sorry, Takov. That's most frustrating. Let me just go in here. Okay, well that says it's connected. Let me yeah, generally speaking it's fine. But what did you set off there? Hello. Let's see if I can remember how to do this. I think I do it like this. Hello. Right then, let's see if those are going to go off by hand. Let me see if I can do one. Let me see if one of those is going to work. No. Okay. If they're not going to work, I'm just going to go in. Oh, that crashed. That's curious. That's even more curious. Okay, I'll try that again. Honestly, I have to speak to Dust. Hello Paul, how you doing? We're just checking things are working properly. Then they're not. And that's crashed again. Okay, I can see what the problem is. I'm just going to disable the channel points because something's busted. So we'll turn all of those off for now so that nobody can waste their points. Right then. Okay, so where was I? Ubuntu Retro Remix. Been working on that. Optimized that build process considerably. That's all built was derived from the Ubuntu MATE build process. So now I'm going to roll all of that good stuff back into the Ubuntu MATE build process for the Raspberry Pi. So that we get all of those optimizations. Not least is a bunch of stuff to handle caching of deb packages, which really accelerates things. So let's drop down here. So here's the script for the Ubuntu MATE build process, and over here this is the current state of things for the retro remix, which I think this evening, I hope this evening, I'm going to do a stream where I'm actually going to play some games from different systems on the retro remix to see how it's performing, because this is looking really good now. It's got to a place where I think it's ready for some serious use. So I think I could meld this, but they're different enough that that's going to be a rather large diff tree. So I think what I'm going to do is start by merging in bits by hand, like I changed how I stand up the pre-created cached directories and things like that. What's this, Paul? Nice cup of Ceylon. Very good. Yeah, it's a wise choice. So maybe I should meld this and see what I can see. Let's is that this? That's not the right thing. Retro Rem Ubuntu Pi image. Yeah, it is. Okay. Well, let's see how awful that looks side by side. And see if that's a manageable starting point. Like I say, they are quite closely related, but the build process has diverged quite considerably. So maybe I'll... Yeah, we do have some differences here. At least I've kept those the same. So I think what we'll do is we'll just move over this creating the cache pieces. We'll move that over, because that's definitely something we want to bring in. So here's some loops that build up a bunch of pre-created cache directories. This helps running the stages iteratively. That's right, so this stuff we won't be needing anymore. So anything to do with the pre-installed server images can go away, because we're going to deb bootstrap everything. And if you saw, when did we do this? On Thursday last week we did a stream over on the Slim DevOps channel, and what we were working on there was trying to create a Docker image from scratch by building effectively our own Ubuntu root file system, and we used deb bootstrap to do that. And it was actually what I've been doing recently with the retro remix, which was kind of my inspiration for like how to solve that problem. Oh goodness me, I'm not sure you want to be watching me at 4K. That's probably bad for your eyesight. You see the details. Oh, you can see the text in the editor maybe. Yeah, don't look too closely at my fat face, but maybe you can see what's in the editor a bit more. Okay, so I think all of that we want to bump this to beta 2, because this will be a different image when we actually come to building it. Looks like we can make shell check happy by doing this as well, so let's do that now whilst we're at it. And we're not going to need any options at all for this. We won't need any arguments, so we can ditch all of that. Which means we can also ditch this there, because we don't need a pre-install server image for that either. Right. And we don't need that. Okay. And what's this image? Oh yeah, we'll need to change all of that over. So we did this, didn't we? We did an image out like that, which we'll need to do something similar here. So that will need to be Ubuntu flavor. So if I get rid of that, in fact, it will just be flavor. We don't need the remix. Image version. Image version is... Okay, I'm going to need to supply all of this by hand now, so that's going to need to be taken from this, I suppose. That should do it. Let's just get rid of all of that, and that, and that, and then drop these in. So we've now got the version that we're building from the release and the architecture and the quality. So that is going to build dash that dash arch. Okay. But before, did it have... It had something on the end, I think. Let's just go and look at the download page. The baby sleeps like a log next to me listening to... Oh, well, I'm glad I've still got my soothing voice for children, because that... I am aware that that worked quite well with my daughter and my niece. I was designated uncle to sleep upon when they were babies. Right then. Let's have a look. Let's just check the... we don't want to do that. We want to do the Pi version. Let's just check what we've used. Yeah, so we're going to need this plus Raspi. Desktop architecture plus Raspi. Okay. So let's just go and tag that on the end of this. There we go. So that should be... That should read Ubuntu MATE version, insert the quality string if one exists, and then the architecture, and then specifically it's for the Raspberry Pi. So that should be all we need for that, although we've now got relver. I wonder what if that's used anywhere else. Apparently it is down here. So and there. Oh, okay, that's fine. So relver can just become the same as that. For the sake of not going through and having to change environment variables everywhere, we'll just keep those the same for the moment. Right then. Oh, crikey. That's not what we want. Okay. So, let's have a look here. What does Takeoff says? Yeah, Takeoff says, am I planning an AArch64 release as well? So, yes. The retro remix scripts I did adapt, although Ludo, which I'm using in there, is only for ARM-HF at the moment. I have made those scripts so that they can build ARM64 and ARM-HF images. And this Pi image for the Raspberry Pi has always been able to produce ARM-HF and ARM64, so I'm obviously going to preserve that. And it's easier to do here because I'm not using any binaries from some sort of third parties. I build all the software myself, so I can ensure that I've got a full software stack for ARM64. And that's governed by just toggling, you know, this here to the appropriate architecture label. So IMG release is impish. So I think we're going to have to... I think we'll just make release equal to img release as well, because I think that's actually the tag we're going to be using mostly in this revamped version. So let's chuck all that away. I think that'll be fine. Okay. Let's see if we can meld in some of the easier bits and pieces from further down this script. So let's reload that. Okay. So we do have some changes in the way this is built, which I think I'll copy them from hand because it'll be a little easier to see what's going on here. So let's go and move the nspawn stuff over by hand. So this is a wrapper for where is it? There it is. This is a wrapper for systemd-nspawn, so I'm building the images inside a foreign container, so an ARM container on the PC. And I've added a couple of bits to this. I've also removed a couple of subtle bits as well. Oh, actually, I want to do that the other way. Let's move these round so that they reflect the same order in meld as they do here. So we'll take that and we'll copy it. No, let's do it the right way. Goodness me, Martin. Let's try that again. We're taking from the retro remix image and we'll drop that directly on here. So once I paste this in, I'll just highlight some of the differences. So the first is we're now using this rstage0 as sort of a common cache that is anything that isn't through the apt build process or the root file system process. So these are assets that we use. And then on the build server, I say server, it's a VM that I run locally. I've found that I've used apt-cacher-ng in the past when I used to look after, big data center stuff, and it was a great way to sort of stop everything shooting off to the internet every time there was an update. And I found that the default configuration for this works perfectly as like a cacher for the build process. So hello, Black Tomcat. Good morning. Welcome. How are you? Thanks for stopping by. So, Black Tomcat asks, is this specific to the MATE version and what are you optimizing for? So, the optimizations here are mostly in the time it takes to produce a new build. So all the software is built and compiled. I do that work in the Ubuntu and Debian archives. And what we're doing here is actually assembling an image that you can put on a SD card or USB stick on the Raspberry Pi. So this is the image building process. And what I'm optimizing here is we're going to optimize the size of the image, because I've learned some things about how to compose the images to pull in fewer unnecessary dependencies. And then this piece here, which I'm just talking about, is using an apt cacher so that the build process speeds up locally, because it only ever has to warm up the cache once, and then you can do successive builds as you're iterating through, configuration changes much quicker. So it's an optimization for size, and build time is what I'm striving for here. You're welcome. So we use a few Raspberry Pis with Ubuntu at work, but not building images much. Okay, interesting. What are you using your Ubuntu images on the Pi for? I used to work at Canonical and did a lot of the work to help bring up that Raspberry Pi on Ubuntu. Right then, so this is new, and this is just shoving the they make little oh really, that sounds interesting. Making cars go round. Are they is this for like machine vision stuff, for robotics type applications, or is it actually a toy? Right, so this pushes the apt cacher configuration into the apt configuration of the container that's building the image. Trajectory planning. Nice. Yeah, please. Yeah, I've had to tweak the moderation settings. If that doesn't, I tell you what, if you want to, we've got a Discord as well that goes along with the community around here. If you go to wimpysworld.io/discord, we've got a Raspberry Pi section there. Paste there. You can try pasting here, and I'll see if it'll come through. But I've had some spammers in here recently, and I had to take measures.
Thank you for the follow, Ben Gizmo.
Hey, Ben Gizmo, thank you very much for the follow. So, yeah, so that's the app cache stuff, and then we remove it at the end so we don't taint the final image. And then I removed the host name setting here because we're going to do that somewhere else now. So that's a little tweak, and those apt cacher improvements are, well, I may be able to show that later because it has saved a bunch of time. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move away from in this image builder. This would mount a pre-installed server image. Okay, let me. Oh, it didn't let the message through, unfortunately. Sorry. No, you won't get banned here. It won't ban you, but it didn't let the message through, unfortunately, and I don't have a record of what that was. Sorry. I need to do some work on the moderation settings here because it's all a bit funky at the moment. Right then. So where were we? Yeah. So currently the MATE images for sort of a originally an optimization step, I was ingesting the pre-installed server images. This was something I was doing while we were iterating on this at work. But it turns out actually the amount of times that the initial RAM disk needs to be rebuilt as a result of having that kernel in that image from the outset slows the build process down considerably. So what we're going to do now is deb bootstrap the base system, and then we're going to install the kernel very late in the process. And this was something I talked about a few days ago with the retro remix stuff, was something that I'd figured out was a significant optimization. So we'll create a stage 1 bootstrap here, which this is the bootstrap taken from the retro remix. So we're just going to pick that up, and then we'll just cut a few bits out. So let's take that, and we don't need any of this unpack stuff. That can all go away. And then this apt stage, we don't need either. So this was actually stripping out server components. So we don't need, we might want to keep that around. So let's just look at that. Yeah, so let's paste that in there. We'll keep those few lines and then throw away all of this, I think is how that's going to work. So let's just pick up those lines there, and we'll incorporate this where up here, like so. So that's a PPA for when I was building the 2004 version of Ubuntu MATE. I think I still need that. I can double check that later. But now we've got some things that we can change here. We can change this to just be flavor, because in fact, do I even need that? Yeah, I suppose I do. We'll just change that to flavor there and here to make sure the host name of the device is correctly configured. And we'll do the same here as well, so that the hosts file has a correct reference. We'll leave that intact. All of this is going to be fine. So, but up here we're going to need to do some work. So let's adapt this. Local repo. So this is installing the tooling you need on the host to run this stuff. And this was one of the things I'd worked out, a subtle difference between the Cloud Guest utils and the cloud image utils packages and what their downstream dependencies are. Hey Defips, how you doing? You well? So Takov says, how long do we have two penguins at the bottom of the screen? So as people follow, it starts a follow train, and a little tux waddles across the bottom of the screen to the other tux, and the more people that follow at the same time, the longer the penguin keeps walking. Hey TC, good to see you again. How are you doing? So this is telling me something's unhappy here. So what have I overlooked? We don't need this tool stage because that's happening in the Bootstrap itself. So I'll just go and correct this down here. So we'll get rid of that and we will make this stage Bootstrap. And we won't need this apt piece. In fact, it won't be that. So let's hit save. Why is... oh, there we go. That's fine now. So we are telling it the architecture, which is ARM. We're telling it where to cache the debs for the Bootstrap process. We're telling it what components we want. So we don't want to exclude anything here. But we do want to do this inclusion piece because we want to make sure we grab this package, which is a dependency we absolutely want to have in the image at the earliest possible moment. Once that's done, so this will do the second stage, which will then initialize that root file system. Then we'll lay down an apt sources list template, set the host name. On 2004, we'll add the, we could probably change that to img ver now, seeing as though we know that we're going to move to that. And then here, I'm going to drop this because that was specific to the retro remix. That will get pulled in for Ubuntu MATE later in the package dependency resolution. But now we're going to install this. This is the tool that does the growing online file system resizing the first time you boot the Pi. And something that I learned is apt and apt-get are resolving dependencies differently at the moment, and I'm still trying to collect debug information because I'm sure there's a bug there. And we're not going to wrap that in a conditional for Ubuntu MATE. We will just install that. And then we'll do an auto clean and a clean. So that gives us our root file system with just the Ubuntu base system in it. So let's see down here if I have a step that installs the desktop, because I think I don't. So what we'll do is we'll...
Thank you for the follow, Rockstery 2010.
Thanks very much for the follow. I appreciate that. Welcome to the stream. So, I think the first one handles spaces better. Sorry, what are you referring to there, Tomcat? As long as you enclose everything in double quotes. Yeah, I'm trying to do my best to make sure that everything I do off the bat is shell check happy. I know I actually need to put some more guards around these statements. I'm currently building in VMs though, so I'm not too concerned about that. We don't need that comment in this, and we don't need that comment because that isn't relevant to Ubuntu MATE. So I think we're going to have a stage 2 here. Just for simplicity, we'll call this desktop. And we will simply do an nspawn get install Ubuntu MATE, and that will install the Ubuntu MATE desktop meta package. I suppose technically I should do this. There we go. Oops, there we go. So that can be, I think, the sum. Oh, you need a -y on there. So that will then bring up the desktop in its own stage, which is handy for when we need to do iterative stuff. So let's come down here and drop that in. Oh, not Bootstrap. Let's try that again. Desktop. Right then. So from this point, I think everything should be similar enough now that it is compatible. So then we move into this stage where we need to seed some snaps. And I obviously have a bunch of stuff to remove snaps that were in the server image, which we don't need anymore. So all of that removal stuff can go. And we can now just leave seed channels defined there. So we'll double quote these. Just to make shell check happy. This is a full path, so that probably needs doing that and this. So yeah, it's been an interesting discipline making sure that I actually try and make everything shell check compliant. I'm not 100% there yet, but I'm pretty close. The next available streamer is reserved for you. Please wait just a little longer. What's that? Sorry? Oh, sorry, Defips. Sorry, Defips. I'd lost track on the conversation. So that should just be fine. That should work just as it did before. Now we didn't need to strip out a bunch of stuff. This will then pull in those images. We should double quote these. Okay. And okay, we'll double quote those. This, because of the glob, will only double quote the entries. Okay, right then we get into the configuration stage. So we make sure that Network Manager is enabled, so that's fine. We've got a conditional there for 2004, which we now know we can use imgver for. So we'll leave that alone. The architecture, we just have a flag we need to set, that's fine. This configuration is going to be the same. This is all the same stuff. Oh, we might want to come in here. I found a couple of tricks just recently. I might tweak that in a moment. Then we're standing up the OEM config. Nothing should change here. I won't get into double quoting. Yeah, I could double quote these very quickly. Might as well. So let's do that. That's not a part of this process. So all of this is fine. And then we're in the cleanup stage, and right, okay. This is where things change. So on the retro remix side of things. So this is where we install Ludo, which is the game emulator, and we also install the full graphics stack here. So none of this is relevant for pulling over. Oh, pardon me, for pulling over. Sorry, what was the question? One thing I've always wondered, why double space the variable, double quotes around the variables. You don't always need to do that. Where it's most important is where you're referencing file paths or directory paths that may include spaces and other special characters, and by double quoting them you know that they're always going to resolve. Where you can come unstuck with that is that some people do create usernames with spaces in the username, and so if you'll reference anything that is an expansion of like $home, you should double quote around it to ensure that it actually works. But shell check always prefers that you double quote variables to prevent that splitting across spaces. So it's just good practice, unless you know specifically why you shouldn't use it, in which case you can tell shell check to ignore that particular use of an undouble quoted string. But it's rare you don't want to double quote a variable. Hopefully that makes sense. And now I understand some of what Tomcat was saying. Yeah. Yeah. And I always use the braces because it helps you delineate. When sometimes you'll have a statement like this. In fact, let's take this as an example. This is bad. If I wanted to do this, echo these two variables together, I think that is more readable, and you can see where the variables align than if you do that. And so years ago, I was working on some mail filtering stuff, and I had variables referenced like this where they were being concatenated, and I had bugs and I wasn't able to see clearly where the bugs had been introduced. So I've just started using this bracing as to clearly, show where the variable delineators are. There we go. It's about the brackets. Okay, so hopefully I've explained why I do the brackets things now. Right then, so this micro desktop stuff is the retro remix, and again, this is all specific to the micro desktop I've put in there. So there is nothing we need to borrow from that, but this we need. So this is new. So this is and I've got config in here as well. So I'm going to need to bring this over and adapt the configuration. So we were just looking here. There is some configuration here. Just a little bit for the file system stuff. And was there some up here as well? There was. So, okay. There's the config. So let's do the kernel here. And then additional configuration in this step here, which will now be 5, I guess. So let's just make sure we've got our build stages in order. So kernel's going to be 4, which comes after snap, okay, and then config is going to be 5. Okay, so let's just bump that to 5. We're going to have to jig this around a little bit. And clean will then be 6. And image will be 7. And then we should have a hashing and signing step here, which will be 8. Okay. There's another example of one that I hadn't done. Right then, so we are now going to have desktop snap. These are going to be 5, 6, 7, 8. I should see if I can get apart in steps with my 5, 6, 7, 8 there. Okay, snap, and this was kernel. So we'll go back now and do the kernel piece and adapt the configs that exist in different spots. So this new function should be just fine. So we're taking from stage 3, so that's good. We lay down the readme, we do the flag for 64-bit, all of that's fine. This is got some new bits in it, in fact. So I'm just doing some bits here to stop the cursor console blanking and turn the cursors off. So we'll leave that in because that's a nice little addition. And then here we install everything that represents the bootloader, the kernel, or the firmware for the Raspberry Pi. So we're doing this late in the build process, so it will only generate the initial RAM disk once, which is a pretty slow thing to do. We then detect the version number of the new kernel, and then I've redone this piece here about how it copies and moves. So there's a tool called Flash Kernel. So when the system's up and running, Flash Kernel makes sure that the device tree, when it gets updated or installed, gets put in the appropriate place. And all I'm doing here is mimicking what Flash Kernel does to move firmware and device tree stuff around. And then we deposit the kernel and the initial RAM disk into the back partition and the firmware partition, if you like, as the thing that will actually get booted by the Pi. Okay, I'm glad that made sense to Phipps. Right then, so let's have a look at the configuration. That's all fine. This is part of the kernel. This essentially is firmware and kernel stuff. So I'm going to yank all of this out up into the... In fact, no, let's think about this. Let's not take it all. Let's just do this piecemeal. So we need this for the README. Because 2004 is actually quite different from 2010 onwards. So we'll actually put this in a conditional now. So we'll say if 2004 let's just do that. We'll have an else here, I think, because it should be that everything after 2004 can be, not that I'm going to be building anything other than 2110 and onward, but that should be there. All of that needs to be tabbed in, and I think that is fine, like so. So what we need to do now is go and pick up other 2004 config changes and put those in this block here. Here. So from the other config step here, let's just check. What have I got here? That is else. So that's something we definitely do just on 2004. So this must be the config for 2004. Wow, how does that differ? I don't see how that's different. But in any case, we'll drag that out, and then we shouldn't need anything below that else there, because we've got, so we'll drag that out, put that in our block here. So this is everything to do with 2004, as is this. And then everything beneath is how newer versions are configured. So what don't we need from this? We don't need any of this now. This is all catered for in the other things, so all of that is fine. And this. So we don't need that either. And that's setting up the OEM stuff, so that's fine. And somewhere here we'll have the file system piece. So that we can probably drag out of there and just make sure is in the kernel function. And there it is. And this should be the same. There shouldn't be any differences. That's, yeah, that's all the same stuff. Okay. I think that has jiggled that around accordingly. So what we've now got is the config step is just configuration that's specific to Ubuntu MATE now. So we've got the making sure that Network Manager is the default network renderer. Disabling the power saving for Wi-Fi on the Raspberry Pi. Otherwise the Wi-Fi performance is even worse than it already is. Actually, that's a good point. I wonder if that's what I was seeing the other day on the Retro Remix. I'll have to have a think about that, an equivalent of that for Conman. Okay, this is all making sure the slideshows work and the first boot setup is enabled. This creates the OEM user, and then we get onto the clean step, and we can see here we need to make some adjustments as well. So this is now stage 5 and needs to pull in from stage 4, and then the clean stage is number 6 and needs to pull in from 5. All of this needs tweaking. I'll do that in just a moment. And stage 7 needs to pull in from oh, hang on a minute. What's this? Yes, okay, stage 7 uses stage 6 because it's composing the image. Okay, that's fine. And then stage 8 is also using stage 6. Okay, let's go up here to the Retro Remix, and the cleanup stage is new, or improved rather. Oh, this is loads of stuff in the Retro Remix in the configure steps. Okay, here we go. I wonder if I can take all of that. We should be able to take everything up to there. That should be the new cleanup step. So let's look at what we had. So we're going to replace those lines. All of this removing kernel stuff is no longer a requirement because we're making sure the appropriate kernels are being installed as opposed to it inheriting from an image where we had kernels laying around. So we don't need to do any of this stuff. That was done in the kernel install stage. And then this is all of the cleanup piece, and we don't need those last 3 lines because, again, we're bootstrapping our own image, so none of that stuff existed. So actually, I think that is our new cleanup. And in there are a few new steps to actually throw out some stuff we don't need. So I think in here we're going to end up with some image size savings, as we are at the top of the script, where we expressly outline how the guest utils are seeded, and that's going to prevent all sorts of stuff getting installed via the other package that there's 2 packages that can satisfy the grow root fs, and one of them pulls in all of the QEMU hypervisor stuff, and that makes the image much bigger. So we're working around that now. All of this is standard stuff. I think what we'll do is we'll go back to meld now, because these should be much more similar, and we should be able to see like the differences in the main pieces now. So yeah, that's fine. That's fine. These changes are all sensible. Okay, then we've got the desktops piece, so that's replaced entirely by Ludo in that instance. We haven't got this micro desktop piece at all, but we should be able to get to, yeah, Meld is not able to deal with this size of diff, because what we want to look at is this here and see that this is broadly the same. And there are some differences, because with the Retro Remix I'm only ever going to target 2110 or newer, because I'm building on 2110 now. When 2004 comes out, then I'll base it on, 2204 comes out, I'll base it on that. But I'm not ever going to build on an older version, so I don't need that backwards compatibility for the Retro Remix. So that looks fine. Oh, okay. Maybe I've got something missing there. Then what's this? This is a config specifically for Ludo in the remix, so that's fine. This is definitely stuff we don't care for. Okay. We don't need that because that's conman specific. So I've got this image dir and temp dir thing. I think I need to look into why I've got those differences. And I've got some here. We've got some shell check happiness stuff here. Look. So, oh, but they actually changed variable names. So I need to go and check what's going on with that. And also, oh, and I don't need to reset these. That's right. I don't need to set those because they were set in higher. No, maybe I do actually. That's something I should probably do over here. Thinking about it. Yeah, that's actually a bug in the Retro Remix that we need to address. Do that. That's to make sure that those stages, if I ever want to run them discreetly, without stages above them having been executed, they actually know where to source their inputs from. Right then. What did I do here? I made image dir the current working directory. And what's temp? Oh, okay, they're equivalent. Okay. All right, then we can do that. So let's hit save there. Let's go and grab up the image building stuff. So I'm not using release in this script at all. So we're doing that. We're hard coding that to be in that directory. So if we got rid of that, in fact, if we did that, that should probably be quoted as it happens as well. So if we make image dir equal to that, no, actually we should do that because then we can remove one and not impact the other. Okay, so let's see everywhere we're using temp. And what about this one? What am I using? Which is the modern one that I'm using. Temp. Okay, so we don't need image dir at all. Okay. Let's move that to the end. Like so. Right, okay, so removing old images. So I think we need to check that stage 7 there and make sure that everything is using temp-dir. So, oh, we also need this line moving over. I think actually, let's. Oh dear, we've got in a mess here, haven't we? Let's get rid of meld. Close without saving. So we need to move over from here. We've got this, which is just grabbing our IP address, so we've got a reference for our apt cache, where the apt cache lives. So let's grab that there, so that's consistently done. And I think what we could do is take this whole piece and if I drop that over the equivalent method here, we can then, when we do the review in Git Kraken, we'll be able to see if there are any blunders being introduced. So there shouldn't have been. This should be absolutely fine. So let's do that. And have we got the edits in here? We do. Okay. So I'm just going to bring up Git Kraken and actually have a little compare there, because I think what will be interesting to see is if this looks like a sensible diff. So this is fine. I know what's going on there. So actually that's something we need to check, that we've got no references to img ver here. And we do in the hash stage, so those need changing to let's just see, we've only got 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the last one. And these we probably need to double quote. So the Ubuntu MATE images I sign with GPG. I'm not going to be doing that with the retro remix images, because part of the point of that script is that other people can run it to do their own image builds. Okay, so now let's go back to Git Kraken. Let's take a look here. Let's just get that up. That's all fine, I think. That's fine. Yeah, we've dropped the machine references in nspawn. That's all good. This is obviously going to be a big change. I think the bit I'm most interested in looking at is everything down here is temp directory.
Thank you for the follow, Mr. Anderson 0x.
Thank you very much for the follow, Mr. Anderson. Welcome to the stream. Right then, let's have a little looky here. I think this is where we need to pay closer attention. These two here. So first of all, we've double quoted some things. That's fine. That's making shell check happy, and we're using the new temp dir rather than image dir. The same mount directory. Okay. This is different, but it's double quoted. So I think that's all fine. That's a new directory we needed. So I think this is fine, and the only way we'll know for sure is if I actually run it up. So how do am I going to be able to do that trivially? Not in the time I have remaining. So I think what I have here is a script that is going to do the right thing, and I think the best thing to do is tomorrow morning I will run this and make sure it builds a working image of Ubuntu MATE. So I think that is probably where I need things to be right now. I'm pretty confident that's going to work, and I can go through the build process tomorrow, because then I can check that the app cache stuff works, and I can double check that the VM is all updated and doing the right thing, and check the metrics on cache hits and cache misses. So I think we'll do all of that tomorrow, because this evening I'm very much hoping that this evening I'm going to be able to stream, and tonight I'm going to be taking a look at the retro remix and how that performs. So that is my retro games console arcade machine emulator OS, and I'm actually going to be playing some games from different systems to make sure that it actually performs well. I think I've done a little bit of testing, not exhaustive, and I'm very happy with where it is. So that project, I think, is going to sort of move into a new phase of development now, where I'll actually publish some kind of image. and ask some people to come and test it on their Raspberry Pis, because that is shaping up to be something really quite sweet. I'm really happy with how that's coming along, but I want to do some sort of proper testing, or also known as play some games. So I'll be running through some of those later, and then tomorrow morning I'll pick this up and make sure that it builds a functioning image of Ubuntu MATE, and if that works, that will become the beta 2 release of the Ubuntu MATE images.
Thank you for the
of
follow,
2110. Thank you very much for the follow, and welcome to the stream. So we'll do that tomorrow morning, and then probably before the end of the week we'll have a refreshed image of Ubuntu MATE out for the Raspberry Pi, or rather Ubuntu MATE 2110. And what I shall be interested to see is how much smaller these images are as a result of this change in the build process. So I'm hoping there'll be some measurable size difference, but if not, there's absolutely going to be a benefit for me in that I know it's going to take far less time to actually build the images themselves. So thank you all very... Ooh, gosh, my transition didn't fire then. How disconcerting. Thank you all very much for coming. I think what we should do is go and see who's streaming right now. There's some interesting people streaming. Let's see who else I can find. Let's see if there's anybody new. If not, I can see some people we've visited before who do interesting stuff. Oh. It's fascinating people. There's someone here learning Game Boy development. I mean, I shouldn't chuckle. There's me making a whole operating system. One of the purposes of which is to run a handheld console to run Game Boy games. Okay, I think we're going to visit a friend that we've been to before. Clicked a thing. I didn't mean to click a thing. Okay, let's give this a go. Right then, we'll start a raid up then. Thank you all very much. I'll see you later or tomorrow. But for now, we will go and visit Julie Strater, who does Blender stuff and game development. So we'll be heading over there. Thank you all very much, and I will see you soon. Bye for now.